If truth liberates, why does it hurt the moment we see it? This is one of the oldest paradoxes in both spirituality and psychology. We celebrate truth as the path to freedom, yet when it finally arrives, it often feels like loss. In the beginning, truth does not comfort. It confronts. It dismantles illusions that once provided stability. When a false self-image collapses, the brain treats it as a threat. The anterior cingulate cortex, responsible for detecting conflict, activates pain networks similar to those triggered by physical injury. Awareness itself becomes uncomfortable because it forces the nervous system to reorganize. Shams Tabreez, the spiritual teacher who transformed Rumi, described this process not as punishment but purification. To him, truth was a fire that burns away falsehood before revealing light. The burn is not cruelty, is the very mechanism of healing. To understand why Shams regarded pain as sacred, we must first examine why the modern mind resists discomfort at all. Modern life is engineered for ease. Every inconvenience has an app. Every silence is filled with noise. Yet the more we chase comfort, the less resilient we become to the inner friction that growth demands. People now equate emotional pain with failure instead of feedback. The mind's predictive system prefers stability. When confronted with evidence that contradicts beliefs, it experiences cognitive dissonance, a form of mental tension. Rather than revising assumptions, the brain often edits reality to maintain coherence. Facing the truth about our ego, dependency, or hidden hypocrisy feels unbearable. Shame arises, followed by projection, the impulse to blame others or externalize discomfort. Digital culture amplifies this avoidance. Social media rewards the curation of appearances, teaching us to protect image over authenticity. Neuroscience confirms that the anterior cingulate cortex lights up precisely when belief and reality clash. The resulting stress is not moral failure, is the signal of cognitive realignment. Discomfort is not a flaw in the process. It is the process. Shams Tabreez understood this centuries ago. Before teaching love, he burned illusions. Shams Tabreez stands in Sufi history as a disruptor rather than a comforter. He was the radical teacher who transformed Jalal ad-Din Rumi from a scholar into a mystic. His method was confrontation, not consolation. He described truth as Enchari haqs, the fire of the real. For Shams, purification always preceded union. Falsehood had to die before truth could dwell. He emphasized sincerity stripped of spiritual performance or self-image. In analytical terms, Shams practiced what today might be called experiential psychology, healing through direct encounter with avoided realities. He warned that comfort breeds stagnation and that pain, properly understood, signals alignment with the real. Modern therapy echoes this principle. Exposure therapy and cognitive behavioral frameworks both show that avoidance sustains anxiety, while deliberate exposure rewires fear responses. Shams's burning was the ancient prototype of this same law of transformation. Seeing clearly is painful because illusions once served as emotional shelter. Shams taught that when awareness pierces those illusions, the psyche momentarily loses equilibrium. Awareness dismantles confirmation bias and ego defense mechanisms. The brain's predictive model of self no longer matches incoming data, creating stress. When someone realizes that their spirituality was fueled by pride rather than devotion, shame flares before humility can form. Functional MRI studies show this distress during self-referential error correction. The first burn is neurological, the collapse of the brain's comfort model. Truth rewires perception by destabilizing the outdated map. The ego is a narrative the mind constructs to preserve continuity. It tells us who we are, what we control, and why we matter. Truth challenges that narrative. Shams's statement, "You must become nothing, then everything," expresses a psychological principle. Ego dissolution correlates with decreased activity in the default mode network, the region maintaining self-referential thought. Similar patterns occur in deep meditation and controlled psychedelic research. When certainty collapses, people often fear losing themselves. Yet studies show that temporary disintegration allows new neural connections, upgrade in cognitive flexibility. What feels like annihilation is actually reorganization. The burn of truth is the mind's death and rebirth mechanism, dissolving rigidity so consciousness can expand. Shams viewed divine love not as sentiment but as calibration. Pain refines attachment rather than punishes it. Emotional regulation improves, not by suppression, but by acceptance. Research in effective neuroscience shows that allowing emotions to be fully felt decreases activity in the amygdala and increases integration in the prefrontal cortex. When heartbreak or guilt are faced without denial, they convert into empathy and humility. The heart must burn to become transparent. Only through friction do virtues like compassion emerge authentically rather than pain becomes a feedback loop for alignment, not evidence of cruelty. After the burning, silence follows, not emptiness, but coherence. Once illusions dissolve, the nervous system stabilizes into balance. Neuroscience observes that such post-insight calm aligns with parasympathetic activation and heart-brain synchronization. Clarity is measurable coherence. Shams taught that this silence is not withdrawal. It is union. When noise subsides, the real becomes audible. The burn clears perception. Silence seals the healing. What remains is not a new doctrine, but a nervous system capable of resting in reality. The same truth that wounds the ego heals the soul. The burn is proportional to one's attachment to illusion. Truth itself is neutral. Resistance generates heat. The stronger the identification with the false, the more painful its release. Spiritual pain is not punishment, but recalibration. The mind's predictive coding updates its model of reality, pruning obsolete synaptic pathways. Sufi epistemology calls this purification. Knowledge is not additive, but subtractive clarity comes not by adding beliefs, but by removing distortion in the brain. Synaptic pruning eliminates old connections so new, efficient ones can grow. Learning, whether neural or spiritual, always involves burning. Truth's fire is the pruning of perception. It hurts because transformation is metabolically expensive. Pain reveals the exact location of resistance to truth. Once resistance dissolves, peace is automatic. This insight can be lived. Instead of escaping discomfort, approach it deliberately. Journaling, therapy, or mindful reflection can serve as safe exposure to avoided truths. Repeated contact with emotional discomfort reduces amygdala hyperactivity, teaching the brain that awareness is not danger. Each strong emotional reaction conceals information. Ask, what truth is this pain protecting me from? This question activates metacognition, the ability to think about one's thinking. Acceptance commitment therapy shows that willingness to experience pain paradoxically decreases its intensity. By ceasing resistance, emotional energy reconfigures into meaning. After insight, silence is essential. Quiet observation stabilizes the nervous system and consolidates learning through memory reconsolidation. For Shams, this silence was the language of the real. It is not withdrawal from life, but alignment with its unfiltered rhythm. When these practices combine, they shift the brain from avoidance circuitry to coherence circuitry, a biological reflection of spiritual purification. The burn becomes clarity, the wound becomes wisdom. Truth's burn is not cruelty, it is correction. Across every level, neural, emotional, and spiritual, the same sequence unfolds. Awareness disrupts illusion. The ego resists. Pain emerges. Identity reorganizes, and clarity arises. Shams Tabreez reframed suffering as evidence that truth has entered consciousness. Modern science echoes him. Muscles grow by micro-tearing, and neurons strengthen through challenge. In both cases, stress followed by integration equals growth. When truth burns, the invitation is not escape, but participation. To heal is not to suppress pain, but to understand what it is releasing. As Shams might say, when you feel the burn, do not run. The fire is doing holy work.